The tranquil darkness of the Hidden Hills suburb was abruptly disturbed as a shadowy group of intruders approached a luxurious, dimly lit house. Oblivious to the danger outside, Emily Costner calmly moved about her kitchen, immersed in a rare moment of peace. Her life had once been consumed by violence, a past she desperately wished to forget. Emily, daughter of Hollywood legend Kevin Costner, was not the spoiled celebrity heiress these criminals presumed. Behind her gentle exterior lay the hardened resilience of a former U.S. Army Green Beret sniper. Once one of the military's most lethal operatives, Emily had traded combat boots for normality, burying her nightmares in the quiet solitude of civilian life. Tonight, her world would again be plunged into chaos. Outside, Dimitri Vance, a ruthless criminal mastermind, meticulously directed his men into position. Confident that their wealthy target posed little threat, they planned to abduct Emily, extracting a fortune in ransom from her famous father. Their ignorance of her lethal past would soon become a catastrophic mistake. Inside, Emily paused abruptly, her instincts whispering that something was terribly wrong. Her heart quickened, adrenaline flickering through her veins, a familiar sensation she'd long hoped to leave behind. Unconsciously, her gaze shifted toward a hidden drawer, knowing exactly what lay within, the tools of survival she'd vowed never to use again. This night would force Emily Costner back into the battlefield she'd sworn to abandon. Yet, in the darkest moments, the past she feared might be the only thing capable of saving her. If you're ready to witness a gripping story of survival, vengeance, and courage, subscribe now and watch closely. Emily's fight is just beginning. The night settled over Hidden Hills like a velvet curtain, obscuring the elegant neighborhood in near-total darkness. Emily Costner's home, a tasteful two-story residence tucked discreetly at the end of a winding street, appeared serene from the outside. Its soft interior lights created gentle pools of warmth amid the shadows, giving no indication of the lurking menace just beyond its walls. Inside the spacious kitchen, Emily moved gracefully, immersed in the comforting routine of preparing dinner. Her chestnut hair fell loosely around her shoulders, framing a face etched with quiet strength and delicate features that concealed her true nature. To a casual observer, Emily was simply another privileged young woman, daughter of the iconic Kevin Costner, enjoying the tranquility of her secluded life. Only those who knew her past could sense the subtle tension in her emerald eyes, always alert, forever wary. She paused momentarily, gazing absently at the muted television screen displaying one of her father's classic films. The familiarity brought brief solace, easing the persistent shadows lingering in her mind from years spent serving in the special forces. Yet tonight, Emily felt uneasy, an intuitive whisper of danger brushing against her consciousness. The feeling was faint but persistent, a ghostly reminder of the battlefield instincts she'd struggled to suppress since returning home. Outside, concealed by thick clusters of meticulously pruned hedges, Dimitri Vance watched the house intently. A dangerous man with cold eyes and a rigid jawline, Dimitri exuded authority. The group of mercenaries he'd assembled stood motionless, awaiting his signal, eyes fixed on the quiet residence, unaware of the lethal woman inside. Dimitri's arrogance had led him to underestimate Emily completely, a misjudgment he would soon regret. With a silent gesture, Dimitri dispersed his men around the perimeter, blending effortlessly into the night. They moved with practiced precision, each step deliberate, every movement rehearsed. For them, tonight's operation was routine, another wealthy hostage, another hefty ransom. None considered the possibility that their prey might turn predator. Back in the kitchen, Emily's heart quickened inexplicably. She placed the chef's knife down, silently chiding herself for paranoia. Her therapist had insisted that the hyper-alertness she experienced was a remnant of trauma unnecessary in her civilian life. Yet tonight, those instincts felt sharper, clearer, almost undeniable. She turned toward the window, peering cautiously into the darkness. The yard seemed still, empty. However, Emily knew better than to ignore intuition that had kept her alive countless times. She moved calmly, crossing the kitchen toward a concealed drawer beneath the marble countertop, fingers slipping silently to its edge. Inside lay a compact handgun, a relic from her military days, meticulously maintained and hidden from visitors' eyes. Emily had never intended to use it again, hoping instead that peace would permanently replace war. But old habits die hard, and tonight her instincts screamed louder than her desire for normalcy. Her fingers brushed gently against the cold metal grip, sending a quiet reassurance coursing through her veins. For a moment, she hesitated, contemplating whether her fears were justified or simply phantom remnants of her troubled past. Then she heard it, a subtle, almost inaudible creak, originating somewhere near the side door leading to the garden. The sound was nearly imperceptible, but Emily recognized it immediately. It was the sound of cautious intrusion, a noise she'd learned to identify with lethal clarity. Her muscles tensed instinctively. Emily withdrew the pistol carefully, chambered around with practiced silence, and moved swiftly toward a shadowed corner of the kitchen. Her breathing slowed deliberately, body recalling the calm before battle. Every nerve ending now alert, every sense heightened to razor-sharp precision. Outside, Dmitri silently approached the back door, his gloved hand tightening around the doorknob. Confidence radiated from him, assured by careful planning and years of experience. He slowly tested the handle, pleased to find it unlocked, unaware that Emily deliberately left it that way each evening, a subtle invitation, a strategic trap prepared instinctively for such a moment. As Dmitri eased the door open, shadows spilled softly into the dimly lit kitchen, announcing the impending confrontation. Emily remained motionless, concealed by darkness, eyes locked on the intruder's silhouette, counting the seconds, patiently waiting for the precise moment to strike. Tonight, Emily Costner's peaceful civilian life would collide violently with her lethal past. But this was a battle she was fully prepared to win. Dmitri Vance stepped cautiously across the threshold, his figure framed briefly in the doorway by the faint moonlight outside. He paused for just a moment, senses attuned to the silence inside the house. Behind him, the quiet shuffle of his accomplices indicated they were already maneuvering into position, spreading quietly through the darkened rooms with trained precision. Dmitri's eyes narrowed, scanning the spacious kitchen carefully. Every detail mattered. Hidden in the shadows near the pantry, Emily Costner observed his every move, her heartbeat slow, steady, precisely controlled. Her eyes adjusted swiftly to the dimness, tracing Dmitri's silhouette as he moved silently forward. Her grip tightened slightly on the pistol, finger gently poised along the trigger, disciplined, patient, waiting for the perfect opportunity. Dmitri moved forward, his footsteps soft against the hardwood floor. Arrogantly assured of success, his guard was momentarily lowered as he reached the center of the room. He signaled quietly to the nearest man, who began to sweep the adjoining rooms methodically. A whisper echoed through Dmitri's earpiece. "Ground floor clear, no sign of the girl." "Upstairs," Dmitri instructed quietly, his voice firm yet barely audible. "Find her. Be quick." Emily's eyes tracked each subtle movement, noting Dmitri's calm command, reading his authority instantly. She knew immediately that he was the leader, the one orchestrating this invasion. Memories flickered through her mind, images of past missions, previous targets, commanders who'd underestimated her abilities and paid dearly for their arrogance. As the second intruder passed her hidden vantage point, Emily made her move. Silent and swift as an apparition, she emerged from the darkness behind him, striking decisively. Her left arm wrapped tightly around the man's neck in a practiced chokehold, cutting off any potential noise. With surgical precision, she pressed the cold muzzle of her handgun against his temple, whispering calmly into his ear, "Make a sound and it's your last." The intruder stiffened instantly, breathing shallowly, eyes wide with shock and disbelief. She quickly dragged him backward into the shadowed pantry, keeping him shielded from Dmitri's line of sight. The whole maneuver took mere seconds, quiet, efficient, lethal. In the kitchen, Dmitri froze, sensing something had shifted subtly in the room's atmosphere. The hair on the back of his neck rose, a primal instinct warning him that danger was closer than he'd anticipated. He turned slowly, gaze searching intently through the darkness, attempting to locate the source of his unease. Emily pressed her captive firmly against the pantry wall, pistol trained steadily between his eyes. Her voice, barely a breath, sliced through the tension. "How many of you?" The man hesitated, clearly considering resistance, but the unwavering steel in Emily's eyes quickly convinced him otherwise. "5, he whispered shakily, fear evident. "Why?" "Money," he breathed, voice trembling. "Ransom. Your father." Emily's jaw tightened briefly, frustration flaring at the realization that once again her connection to fame had dragged her into peril. But anger was swiftly replaced by icy clarity. Emotions had no place in combat. Outside the pantry, Dimitri's suspicion intensified. "Report," he whispered sharply into his earpiece. "Status?" Silence followed, a troubling silence, confirming Dimitri's growing suspicion that something was seriously amiss. His men never failed to respond promptly. His heartbeat quickened slightly, adrenaline beginning to surge through his veins. Inside the pantry, Emily swiftly struck her captive on the temple with precise force, rendering him instantly unconscious. She lowered him silently to the floor, her breathing steady. 1 down, 4 to go. She quickly moved toward the pantry doorway, pausing briefly to listen for Dimitri's location. The criminal leader's voice was faintly audible, tense and agitated as he moved cautiously through the room. "Check downstairs again," Dimitri snapped quietly, anxiety now edging into his tone. "Find her, now." Emily adjusted her grip on the pistol, breathing slow, eyes fierce with determination. She knew Dimitri and his men had severely underestimated her, and that arrogance would cost them dearly. This was her home, her territory, and they had invaded it recklessly, unaware of the fury they'd unleashed. The silent darkness surrounding her no longer represented danger, but advantage. Each shadow, each corner, a tool she knew how to exploit. Emily moved forward quietly, her military training taking over instinctively, seamlessly blending her with the darkness itself. Tonight, the criminals had intended to prey upon her weakness. Instead, they had awakened something fierce and unstoppable, a soldier who refused to become a victim again. Dimitri Vance sensed movement behind him, spinning quickly, weapon raised, but he found only emptiness, shadows dancing mockingly at the edges of his vision. He realized with sudden dread that he'd gravely miscalculated the situation. He had entered believing Emily Costner would be easily subdued. Now, he faced the chilling reality that he himself might be trapped. Emily paused silently behind the kitchen's large central island, senses hyper-aware, her pulse steadying into the familiar rhythm of controlled combat readiness. The room was still dark, illuminated only by the faint glow of moonlight filtering through curtains. Across from her position, Dimitri Vance stood tense, his silhouette rigid and uncertain. His confidence had vanished, replaced by the uncomfortable realization that he was no longer in control. Emily closed her eyes briefly, her mind drifting involuntarily back to another shadowed room, thousands of miles away. Memories flooded her senses, unbidden yet vivid. A hot, oppressive night in the Afghan mountains, the crackle of distant gunfire, and the heavy scent of dust and gunpowder clinging to her skin. Back then, she had been Sergeant Costner, a sharpshooter known among her team as Ghost, a name earned through deadly precision and an uncanny ability to disappear into the landscape, undetectable. Those battlefield memories had haunted her dreams long after she returned home. Persistent echoes of comrades lost, missions completed, and moral compromises she desperately wished she could forget. A sudden whisper in Dimitri's earpiece snapped Emily back to the present. "Mike's down," came a panicked voice. "Someone took him out." Dimitri's shoulders tensed visibly, his breathing shallow. "Regroup near the stairs," he responded, voice deliberately calm, attempting to conceal rising panic. "Stay alert, she's dangerous." Emily's mouth twitched slightly, an ironic smirk hidden in the darkness. At least now he knew, though that knowledge had come too late. She silently evaluated Dimitri from her hidden vantage point. He was formidable, calculating, yet his fear was now evident. Good. Fear made people reckless, prone to mistakes, yet Emily knew this was no ordinary burglary. Dimitri's organized approach, tactical communication, and swift reaction implied professional training, likely mercenaries rather than common thieves. Questions gnawed at her. Why target her specifically? Was it truly just ransom, or was there more beneath the surface? Suddenly, footsteps creaked softly overhead. Emily's heart skipped slightly. She'd almost forgotten the men Dimitri sent upstairs. Moving quickly, she left Dimitri momentarily behind, blending silently into the hallway's shadow toward the stairs. Time was limited, every second crucial. She approached the staircase cautiously, pausing as muffled voices drifted down from above. Two intruders, unaware of their compromised situation, searched the second floor with practiced efficiency, doors softly opening, drawers quietly rifled. Emily steadied her breathing, every muscle poised and ready. She lifted her pistol, muzzle aimed upward as she ascended the stairs soundlessly, steps slow and deliberate. Her focus sharpened to a razor's edge, body coiled like a spring, prepared to strike decisively. At the top landing, she paused, hidden in shadows, listening closely. One intruder stood just feet away, his back toward her as he opened the door to her bedroom. Emily didn't hesitate. She lunged forward swiftly, covering the short distance instantly. Her pistol cracked sharply across the back of his skull with precise force. The intruder dropped instantly unconscious before hitting the carpeted floor. The noise, though subtle, alerted the second man in the adjacent room. "Victor," came a cautious whisper. Emily pivoted immediately, pressing herself flat against the hallway wall, silently waiting. The second intruder emerged slowly, his flashlight beam probing cautiously into the darkness. Her breathing slowed further, heart rate dropping deliberately as training took full control. She waited, patient, disciplined. As the intruder approached, flashlight sweeping nervously from side to side, Emily struck again, swift, silent, effective. Her elbow connected firmly with his jaw, instantly followed by a decisive blow to his solar plexus. The man crumpled silently to the floor, breath stolen from his lungs, incapacitated and gasping softly. She knelt beside him, pistol pressed coldly beneath his chin, her voice a quiet threat. "Who sent you?" "Just ransom. That's all I know," he gasped painfully. Emily pressed harder, voice steely, unyielding. "Who hired Dimitri?" "Don't know. Dimitri handles everything himself." Emily's eyes narrowed. Unsatisfied, but aware further questioning was pointless. She struck him sharply across the temple, rendering him unconscious, 3 down. Her attention quickly shifted downstairs. Dimitri remained a dangerous unknown. She moved swiftly back toward the staircase, careful to avoid making any unnecessary noise, descending slowly, each step precise. Reaching the ground floor, Emily found the kitchen now empty. Dimitri vanished. Her pulse quickened, realizing she'd underestimated his cunning. Where had he gone? Was he fleeing or repositioning strategically? Suddenly, her phone, abandoned earlier on the kitchen counter, vibrated insistently, the screen lighting up in the darkness. Kevin Costner's face smiling warmly from the caller ID, unaware of the chaos unfolding in his daughter's life. Emily froze, recognizing Dimitri's likely awareness of the ringing phone. Her mind raced. Had she accidentally provided him with leverage? Was Dimitri now planning a far more dangerous game? She hesitated briefly, memories of her father surging forward, conflicted emotions swirling, fear, anger, protective instinct colliding within her. Dimitri had awakened not only the warrior she desperately wanted to bury, but the fiercely protective daughter, determined never to let harm touch her family again. The past and present merged in that moment, forging Emily's resolve into hardened steel. Dimitri Vance had unknowingly ignited a war, one Emily Costner was now fully committed to winning. Emily's phone continued to vibrate insistently, casting an eerie, flickering glow across the kitchen countertop. Her father's familiar face seemed oblivious to the tension enveloping her home. She moved quickly toward it, senses alert, fully aware that Dimitri could use this distraction against her. With practiced caution, Emily silently silenced the call, tucking the phone carefully into her pocket. The sudden silence in the house felt oppressive, thick with hidden menace. Dmitri was clever, resourceful. He wouldn't flee. He'd reposition, strategize, and strike again from an unexpected angle. Emily understood this tactic well. She'd employed it countless times herself during operations overseas. The situation was transforming rapidly into a dangerous game of cat and mouse, each maneuver calculated, deliberate, deadly. Emily crouched low, moving fluidly along the hallway walls, keeping her body concealed in the deepest shadows. Her breathing steadied again, rhythmic, precise, calming her nerves. She knew Dmitri was close, felt his presence lurking just beyond her vision, waiting patiently to strike. He had clearly understood the threat she represented and would adjust accordingly, making him even more dangerous. Suddenly, Dmitri's voice echoed softly through the darkness. "I must admit, Miss Costner, you surprise me." His tone was unsettlingly calm, betraying none of the tension Emily knew he must feel. She paused, analyzing his voice carefully, pinpointing his location near the spacious living room adjacent to her current position. "You're not who we thought you were," he continued coolly, his words measured. "Military, special forces, I assume. Impressive." Emily remained silent, refusing to betray her position with a response. Dmitri's attempt to lure her into conversation was an obvious strategy, one she herself had used in similar encounters. Still, his calm assessment of her skills disturbed her. He adapted quickly, a sign of experience and formidable intelligence. "Perhaps we can avoid further violence." Dmitri continued, his voice subtly persuasive. "Surrender quietly. I promise your father will pay, and you'll remain unharmed." Emily's jaw tightened imperceptibly. Dmitri's offer was hollow, a desperate attempt to regain control of a situation that had spiraled beyond his grasp. Emily had witnessed too many promises broken, too many innocents harmed by the false assurances of dangerous men. She knew Dmitri's type intimately, ruthless, cunning, incapable of genuine mercy. She advanced cautiously toward his voice, eyes scanning every shadow, every potential hiding spot, pistol gripped securely. Her heart beat steadily, fueled by controlled adrenaline, memories of past missions flooding her senses. Each step forward was deliberate, methodical, a careful calculation toward confrontation. "You know I can't trust you," Emily finally replied quietly, voice firm, edged with cold defiance. "This ends only one way. You surrender, or I make you." Dmitri laughed softly, a sound filled with dangerous amusement. "I admire your confidence, but your arrogance will cost you. Everyone has a weakness, even you." Emily hesitated briefly, his words striking an uneasy chord within her. Instinctively, she recalled the earlier betrayal revealed by one of his men, someone from her circle leaking critical information to Dmitri. The thought troubled her deeply, clouding her judgment momentarily, exactly as Dmitri intended. In that instant, she heard the subtle creak of a floorboard just behind her. Emily spun around sharply, her heart leaping painfully as Dmitri emerged swiftly from the shadows, gun raised. The brief moment of hesitation had nearly proven fatal. She barely managed to sidestep, Dmitri's pistol muzzle discharging sharply, the bullet splintering wood mere inches from her head. Emily responded instantly, dropping low, aiming her weapon steadily at his center mass. Dmitri, equally skilled, ducked swiftly behind the heavy oak dining table, overturning it to shield himself. "You're skilled, Emily," Dmitri taunted from his cover, breathing heavier now. "But you're distracted. Emotions make soldiers weak." Emily's chest tightened, recognizing the psychological tactic he employed, using her own lingering fears against her. Memories of fallen comrades, moments of hesitation in combat, surged painfully to the forefront of her mind. Dmitri's psychological warfare was precise, expertly executed, threatening to erode her discipline. Yet Emily had trained for moments like this. She closed her eyes briefly, forcing her emotions aside, refocusing sharply. When she reopened them, clarity replaced doubt. Dmitri's manipulation had failed. "You underestimate me," she replied evenly, voice steady, betraying none of her internal struggle. "And it will cost you." She advanced swiftly around the overturned table, pressing her advantage. Dmitri responded by firing again, forcing Emily momentarily behind cover. The fierce exchange of gunfire splintered furniture, shattered glass, filling the room with noise and chaos. Yet beneath the apparent frenzy, both combatants remained coldly strategic, each movement calculated, precise, lethal. Emily repositioned quickly, exploiting a momentary lull in Dimitri's gunfire. She moved silently toward a secondary vantage point behind a heavy marble statue, anticipating his next move. Dimitri's breath rasped quietly, indicating stress and fatigue. She was wearing him down, slowly turning his own game against him. "Give up," Emily urged coldly. "You've already lost." Dimitri laughed again, bitterness lacing his voice. "I never lose, Ms. Costner. Remember that." A sudden noise interrupted their tense standoff, sirens distant yet approaching rapidly. Dimitri cursed softly under his breath, recognizing his time was nearly exhausted. He hesitated, clearly torn between retreating or risking capture to finish their confrontation. Emily understood immediately. The advantage now shifted unmistakably toward her. Dimitri had become the hunted, trapped within her territory, the relentless sound of approaching police sealing his fate. "You're finished, Dimitri," Emily whispered calmly, voice resolute, her pistol unwavering. "It's over." Yet even as she spoke, she knew instinctively that Dimitri's desperation might still prove dangerous. A cornered predator fought hardest when escape seemed impossible, and Dimitri Vance was no ordinary criminal. The distant wail of police sirens grew louder, slicing through the tense silence that enveloped Emily's home. Dimitri's eyes flickered briefly toward the windows, betraying a flash of uncertainty that Emily instantly recognized. She knew the shift in momentum was now decisively in her favor. Yet a cornered adversary was always unpredictable, and Dimitri's reputation suggested he wouldn't be captured easily. "Time's up," Emily said firmly, her voice unwavering despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "You can surrender now and live, or fight and face the consequences." Dimitri's jaw tightened visibly. His gaze hardened, clearly weighing limited options. Suddenly his lips twisted into a cold smile, defiant and unsettling. "It's not over yet, Emily, not even close." Without hesitation, Dimitri lunged toward the living room window, firing blindly at Emily's position as he moved. She dropped quickly, shielding herself behind a marble sculpture, as bullets shattered decorative glass, raining shards upon the hardwood floor. Dimitri smashed through the window in a cacophony of splintering wood and breaking glass, disappearing swiftly into the night. Emily sprang to her feet immediately, sprinting toward the shattered window, pistol raised defensively. Outside, Dimitri had already vanished into darkness, footsteps fading quickly. Frustration tightened her chest. She'd underestimated his desperate willingness to risk injury for escape. The sirens arrived abruptly, headlights flooding the driveway, casting harsh beams of white across the damaged front of her home. Police cars screeched to a halt, officers swiftly exiting vehicles with guns drawn, scanning the area cautiously. Emily raised her hands instinctively, pistol pointed safely toward the sky. "Inside, I'm the homeowner." Officers approached swiftly, weapons lowered once they recognized her. Sergeant Dan Reynolds, a rugged officer Emily had briefly met at neighborhood watch meetings, stepped forward, his expression a mix of concern and astonishment. "Emily? Are you hurt?" Reynolds asked sharply, quickly evaluating her condition. "I'm fine," she replied calmly, lowering her weapon slowly. The intruders were professional, 4 incapacitated inside. Leader escaped, armed, dangerous. Reynolds signaled swiftly, dispatching teams into her house to secure intruders. He turned back to Emily, clearly impressed. "You took down 4 on your own?" Emily nodded simply, modestly acknowledging his comment. Her mind raced with questions, tension easing slightly in the presence of reinforcements. Yet Dimitri's escape troubled her deeply. He was resourceful, dangerous, and now deeply vengeful. A soft, concerned voice interrupted from the driveway's edge. "Emily?" Emily turned sharply toward the familiar voice. Marcus Hartley, her elderly neighbor, stood hesitantly, wrapped in an old wool coat, holding a shotgun awkwardly but firmly. Marcus, a retired army veteran who often shared gardening tips and stories of his past, seemed utterly out of place amidst the chaos. "Marcus?" Emily asked, surprise evident. "What are you doing here?" "Heard the commotion. Thought you might need backup," Marcus replied, his voice steady despite visible anxiety. "Saw one of those thugs escaping. Gave him a warning shot as he jumped your fence. Not sure if I hit him, but he limped off pretty badly." Emily felt a surge of gratitude mixed with worry for the elderly man's safety. "Marcus, you shouldn't have risked yourself." He smiled gently, shaking his head dismissively. "We protect our own, Emily. It's what soldiers do." Emily's heart softened. Marcus's unexpected bravery reminded her of bonds forged in war, bonds she'd desperately tried to forget, but now recognized as invaluable. Yet gratitude quickly turned to dread as Marcus suddenly swayed, placing a shaky hand against his abdomen. Crimson stained his coat. He'd been wounded. "Marcus!" Emily cried, rushing to his side as Reynolds shouted urgently for medical assistance. She caught Marcus gently, guiding him to the ground, fear twisting painfully in her chest. "I'm okay," Marcus murmured weakly, eyes reassuring despite obvious pain. "Took worse back in Nam." Emily pressed firmly against the bleeding wound, desperate to slow the blood loss. Marcus winced slightly, but maintained his gentle smile, trying to reassure her even in pain. "You saved my life tonight," Emily whispered, voice tight with emotion. "Hang on, Marcus. Please." Marcus chuckled softly, humor glimmering weakly in his eyes. "We both know the risks, Emily. Always have." Emily's throat tightened painfully. She had never intended for her violent past to endanger innocent friends, especially someone like Marcus, who deserved peace after his years of sacrifice. Guilt surged heavily through her chest, amplifying the chaos already swirling inside her. Paramedics arrived swiftly, gently taking Marcus from Emily's grasp and loading him carefully onto a stretcher. Emily watched helplessly as they worked, silently vowing to repay his courage somehow, knowing his selfless action had shifted her perspective irreversibly. As officers secured the property, Sergeant Reynolds returned to Emily, face somber. "Marcus might have just saved your life tonight, Emily." That intruder was clearly heading for the wooded area. Would have been impossible to track. Emily nodded solemnly, eyes distant, haunted by Marcus's sacrifice. "He didn't have to do that." "No," Reynolds replied quietly, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder, sensing her inner turmoil. "But he chose to." People like Marcus, they never stop being heroes. Emily felt tears sting her eyes, fighting desperately to remain composed. Marcus had reminded her of the importance of camaraderie, sacrifice, and courage, values she'd struggled to embrace since leaving the battlefield behind. Now, in a cruel twist of fate, those values had resurfaced violently, forcing her to confront the reality she'd avoided for so long. Tonight, Emily Costner understood clearly she could no longer run from her past. Dimitri had made sure of that, but he'd also underestimated something crucial: Emily's newfound determination, strengthened immeasurably by Marcus's sacrifice. From this moment forward, Emily knew the conflict had changed fundamentally. Dimitri would soon discover the price of attacking not just Emily, but those she cared deeply about. Hours passed, yet the tension from the attack lingered heavily over Emily's home, now flooded with harsh spotlights and bustling with forensic investigators. Emily stood silently at the kitchen window, watching detectives meticulously catalogue evidence. Her mind churned restlessly, replaying the evening's events: Marcus's selfless heroism, Dimitri's cold confidence, and the disturbing implication that someone close had betrayed her. Her phone buzzed sharply again, snapping her attention back to reality. It was her father once more, persistence bordering on panic. Reluctantly, she answered, steadying her voice carefully. "Emily?" Kevin Costner's voice trembled slightly, anxiety thinly masked beneath fatherly calm. "The police called me. I'm flying home immediately. Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Dad," Emily assured him gently, masking her turmoil. "A friend got hurt protecting me, but he'll recover. It's under control." Kevin paused, the silence heavy, unspoken concern lingering between them. "Who did this, Emily? Why you?" "I don't know yet," Emily replied carefully, concealing details to spare her father unnecessary anguish. "But I promise, I'll handle it." She ended the call gently, guilt gnawing at her for keeping him partially in the dark. Turning, she noticed Sergeant Reynolds approaching, his expression grave. "Emily?" Reynolds began hesitantly, clearly troubled. "We found something you should see." He handed her a sealed plastic evidence bag containing a neatly folded handwritten note, carefully extracted from the pocket of one unconscious intruder. Emily unfolded it slowly, reading words scrawled hastily yet unmistakably familiar. "Security disabled. Back door unlocked nightly. Alone after 8 p.m. Easy target. R." Her heart froze painfully, blood turning cold. The note's handwriting was unmistakable, belonging unmistakably to Richard Taylor, a longtime friend from her military days who'd visited often since she'd returned home. Richard had known her routines intimately, had shared drinks in her living room, joked warmly at her dinner table. The betrayal sliced deeply, painfully precise. "Emily?" Reynolds's voice was gentle yet probing. "Do you recognize this?" She hesitated briefly, weighing honesty against disbelief. "Richard Taylor," she replied softly, bitterness tinging her words. "We served together, trusted each other with our lives." Reynolds frowned sympathetically, nodding gravely. "We'll find him, I promise." Emily nodded numbly, reeling from Richard's betrayal. She'd never imagined someone from her inner circle, someone who'd survived combat alongside her, would sell her out so callously. Anger simmered slowly beneath shock, mingling dangerously with confusion and hurt. "Why?" she whispered quietly, more to herself than Reynolds. "Richard had nothing to gain." Reynolds hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "Money, debts, desperation, it could be anything. Men have betrayed friends for less." Emily nodded slowly, yet instinctively knew this ran deeper. Richard had always seemed stable, honorable. Something felt profoundly wrong, missing from the equation. Yet evidence was undeniable, painfully incriminating and impossible to dismiss outright. Her phone vibrated again, startling her. Emily glanced down. Richard's name flashed insistently across the screen. Her stomach twisted sharply with conflicting emotions, suspicion battling hope. Reluctantly, she answered, "Emily!" Richard's voice sounded rushed, panicked. "Listen, whatever you're thinking, it's not true. Please hear me out." "Explain the note," Emily demanded coldly, voice edged with hurt. "Why betray me?" Richard hesitated, voice breaking slightly under pressure. "I didn't. Not willingly. Dimitri blackmailed me, threatened my daughter Emily. He knew I'd never betray you otherwise." Emily's breath caught painfully, mind racing rapidly. Richard's daughter, Sarah, a bright-eyed teenager she'd often cared for. Dimitri's threat felt painfully plausible. Richard's desperation rang sincere, fear evident beneath his usually composed demeanor. "Prove it," Emily replied cautiously, softening slightly yet maintaining vigilance. "Where are you?" "Hiding," Richard admitted, voice strained. "They're hunting me now. Dimitri realized you survived and suspects I warned you. I didn't, but now I'm a target just like you." Emily felt turmoil rising swiftly within her. Richard's betrayal now appeared layered, manipulated by Dimitri's ruthless tactics. Her training urged caution, yet her heart demanded immediate action. "Stay hidden," Emily instructed firmly, making a quick decision. "I'll find you." "Be careful, Emily," Richard pleaded softly, voice tight with regret. "Dimitri won't stop. He's obsessed. This isn't about money, it's personal. Something between Dimitri and your father's past triggered this." Emily's mind raced rapidly, a new troubling revelation reshaping her understanding entirely. Dimitri's motivations now seemed deeper, rooted in a past intertwined dangerously with her father's own mysterious history. How much had Kevin Costner concealed from her? "I'll handle Dimitri," Emily promised quietly, voice resolute. "Stay alive, Richard. We'll confront this together." She ended the call quickly, turning swiftly toward Reynolds, eyes fiercely determined. "Find Richard Taylor, but quietly. He's innocent, caught in Dimitri's web." Reynolds nodded decisively, clearly trusting Emily's instincts. "Understood." Emily felt urgency mounting, Dimitri's escape and Richard's blackmail revealing complexities previously unseen. Her father's hurried return added another layer of tension, forcing Emily to confront uncomfortable truths. Her past, present, and future were deeply intertwined with secrets she'd never imagined. She stepped outside, cool night air biting sharply at her skin, eyes scanning the darkness surrounding her home. Dimitri had vanished temporarily, but he would return. She knew that instinctively. He'd planned this meticulously, manipulating friendships, exploiting vulnerabilities, betraying trust at every level. Yet Dimitri had inadvertently rekindled something powerful inside her, a soldier's resolve, hardened by betrayal, strengthened by loyalty. Emily Costner no longer sought only survival. She sought answers, justice, redemption for those Dimitri had harmed. She clenched her fists tightly, emotions now replaced entirely by determined clarity. Dimitri's ruthless strategy had wounded deeply, but Emily had faced worse. He'd underestimated her resilience, her allies, her capacity to fight back. Richard's betrayal had nearly shattered her, but understanding the truth now galvanized her resolve. Dimitri had ignited a war built on deception, blackmail, and vengeance, yet Emily vowed to finish it decisively. "Tonight," Emily promised silently. Dimitri had chosen the wrong target, awakened a determined adversary whose strength lay not merely in skill, but in unbreakable loyalty and relentless determination. Betrayal had forged something powerful within her, something Dimitri could neither anticipate nor defeat. Dawn emerged reluctantly over hidden hills, bathing Emily's damaged home in pale amber hues, softly illuminating shattered windows and bullet-scarred walls. The tranquil morning felt sharply incongruous with the violence of the night before. Emily stood silently on her porch, eyes distant, contemplating the surreal transformation of her quiet suburban life into an unfolding battlefield. She glanced at her phone again, anxiously awaiting updates on Marcus's condition and Richard's location. Her father would arrive soon, forcing conversations she wasn't yet ready to face. Dimitri's words echoed hauntingly in her mind. "Everyone has a weakness, even you." A vehicle approached slowly, breaking her concentration. Emily tensed, hand instinctively drifting toward the pistol discreetly tucked against her back. The tension eased slightly as Sergeant Reynolds stepped out, eyes weary but focused. "Any news?" Emily asked immediately, her voice tight with barely contained anxiety. "Marcus stabilized," Reynolds assured gently. "Doctors say he'll pull through. As for Richard, he's safe for now. We've arranged a meeting point. He's waiting for you." Emily exhaled deeply, relief flooding through her briefly, yet quickly tempered by renewed vigilance. "Dimitri?" Reynolds hesitated, frowning deeply. "No trace. He's vanished completely. Professional tactics. Clearly experienced, likely ex-Special Forces himself." Emily nodded slowly, absorbing the troubling confirmation. Dimitri's proficiency matched her own, his obsessive personal vendetta deeply disturbing. "I need answers," she said firmly. "Richard claims Dimitri targeted my father deliberately. This goes deeper than ransom." Reynolds's expression hardened slightly, voice cautious yet supportive. "Then you'll need Richard's full cooperation. We arranged a secure location, quiet, secluded, just us." "Thank you, Dan," Emily replied quietly, gratitude evident. Reynolds's trust was comforting, especially now. Minutes later, Emily and Reynolds arrived at a secluded lakeside cabin, concealed within dense woodland, chosen deliberately for its isolation. Richard stepped hesitantly onto the porch, eyes filled with apprehension, guilt evident. "Emily," Richard began quietly, eyes downcast, "I never meant—" She raised a hand gently, silencing his apology. "I know. Dimitri manipulated both of us. But I need the whole truth." Richard exhaled deeply, nodding solemnly. "Months ago, Dimitri contacted me. He knew things about my past, about your father's past. Threatened Sarah, my family. I was forced into silence. He wanted details, weaknesses. I never thought he'd truly attack you. Why target my father? Emily pressed insistently. What's the connection? Richard hesitated, eyes darkening painfully. Your father once invested in private military contracts overseas, operations Dimitri's team handled. Something went wrong. Dimitri lost his entire squad, blamed your father personally. Revenge twisted him into something dangerous, obsessive. Emily felt nausea rise sharply within her. Her father, a beloved actor known for heroism on screen, entangled secretly in violent conflicts abroad. It seemed impossible, surreal. Yet Richard's sincerity was undeniable, truth raw and painful. I trusted you, Richard, Emily whispered tightly. I trusted him. Why hide this? Your father wanted to protect you from knowing, Richard admitted, eyes deeply regretful. He hoped burying secrets would spare you pain. Clearly it backfired. Emily nodded slowly, accepting reluctantly that secrecy had caused more harm than protection. Now, hidden truths had erupted violently into her reality, forcing confrontations she'd never imagined. A sudden, subtle movement beyond the tree line interrupted Emily's thoughts sharply. Instinctively, she raised a hand, instantly silencing Richard and Reynolds, senses heightened immediately. Her eyes narrowed sharply, scanning shadows carefully. What is it? Reynolds whispered urgently, trust evident as he watched her closely. Movement, Emily murmured softly, focused intently. Her pulse quickened, recognizing tactical maneuvering instantly. They found us. Before Emily could finish, gunfire erupted abruptly from multiple angles, bullets tearing through the cabin's wooden exterior, splintering beams and shattering windows violently. Reynolds pulled Richard swiftly inside, taking defensive positions instinctively, returning fire. Emily flattened against a wall, weapon drawn swiftly, firing calculatedly through shattered windows toward shadows converging around the cabin. Dimitri had anticipated their actions, orchestrating an ambush designed to finish what he'd begun. Anger surged hotly within her, betrayal, manipulation, violence finally igniting fierce determination. Hold your positions! Emily shouted sharply, instincts honed through years of combat instantly taking command. She moved decisively, returning fire accurately, systematically neutralizing targets closing in. Richard fought desperately alongside Reynolds, guilt and fear now fueling courage born from loyalty. Their resistance was fierce, unexpected by Dimitri's hired mercenaries who anticipated little opposition. Emily's decisive leadership shifted momentum swiftly. Attackers forced back into defensive retreat. Cover me, Emily commanded urgently, sprinting suddenly toward a fallen mercenary's position, retrieving a dropped assault rifle swiftly. Bullets zipped dangerously close, narrowly missing, yet adrenaline drove her relentlessly. Armed better now, Emily unleashed precise, disciplined bursts of suppressive fire, pushing attackers further into retreat. A sudden, familiar voice echoed sharply through the chaos. Dimitri, his tone coldly amused despite the violence. Impressive again, Emily, but how many friends must suffer for your father's sins? Emily's jaw tightened, fury searing through her veins. Dimitri's psychological warfare aimed ruthlessly at her vulnerabilities, attempting emotional compromise. Yet now, understanding fully his manipulation, Emily refused to falter. You started this war, Dimitri, Emily shouted defiantly, voice steady and fierce. But I'll end it. Dimitri's laughter echoed chillingly. You're welcome to try. Abruptly, gunfire ceased, leaving eerie silence hanging heavily. Dimitri's men had retreated swiftly, vanishing again into shadows. Reynolds exhaled sharply, relief evident, but tempered by unease. He's testing us, Reynolds stated grimly, weakening our resolve. Emily nodded solemnly, understanding Dimitri's ruthless strategy fully. He intended psychological attrition, emotional weakening, breaking their spirit gradually. But Emily felt determination strengthening, resolve solidifying. No, she replied firmly, eyes blazing fiercely. He's strengthening it. Dimitri's war is personal, against me, my father, those I love, but that was his greatest mistake. She turned toward Richard and Reynolds decisively. Dimitri believes he's winning, but tonight we've drawn our own battle lines. No more hiding, no more secrets. Richard nodded, renewed determination evident. Reynolds stepped forward confidently, solidarity strengthening between them, forged through conflict. Tonight, Emily Costner vowed silently. Dimitri's strategy had backfired. He'd intended to weaken bonds, sow mistrust. Instead, he'd inadvertently forged loyalty stronger than steel, resilience unbreakable under pressure. Dimitri had chosen to wage war against Emily's past, present, and future. Now, Emily intended to decisively ensure it became his greatest regret. Dimitri had retreated into the shadows, but Emily was ready. The night was still, her mind focused as the tension mounted. She could feel the weight of the moment. The final confrontation was approaching. Dimitri's men were scattered, but Emily knew he would strike when they least expected it. She motioned for Reynolds and Richard to take cover. They had come too far, and Emily wasn't about to let this slip away. She moved swiftly, methodically through the dense woods, her rifle in hand. Every step calculated, every sound amplified in her ears. Dimitri was close, she could feel it. Suddenly, a flash of movement. Dimitri, standing in the clearing, his back to her. It was now or never. She raised her rifle and aimed. He turned just as she pulled the trigger, the bullet grazing his cheek, but Dimitri was already on the move, ducking into the trees. Emily chased, her pulse quickening. This was the moment to end it. The chase continued, gunfire echoing through the night. Dimitri was wounded, but not out of the game. He had always been a master of escaping, a ghost in the shadows. But this time, Emily was ready. She had spent years hunting enemies like him. Tonight, he wouldn't slip through her fingers. "Is this it?" Dimitri called out, a mocking grin on his face as he turned to face her, blood dripping from his wound. "You think you can stop me?" Emily's eyes narrowed, the weight of her mission settling within her. "I've already won," she said, her voice cold. "It ends now." Dimitri's eyes flashed with something darker, fear. He knew he was running out of options. His back pressed against a tree, he raised his weapon one final time, but his hands were trembling. Emily didn't hesitate. With precision, she aimed for his shoulder, knocking the gun from his hand. Dimitri staggered back, his defiance breaking for a moment. But that moment was enough. Emily was on him in an instant. He was down, pinned against the dirt. "This is over," she said firmly, her grip tightening. Dimitri's breath was labored, and he could no longer pretend he was in control. Dimitri's defiance had broken, but he wasn't finished yet. With a strained laugh, he muttered, "You think it ends with me? There will always be someone like me, Emily." Emily's gaze hardened. Not this time. Her grip tightened as she stared down at him, her eyes filled with resolve. Dimitri had broken her trust, manipulated the people she cared about, and caused countless pain. But now, he was just another obstacle she had overcome. "You've lost," Emily whispered, more to herself than to him. "There's no escape." As the sound of approaching sirens grew louder, she stood tall, the weight of everything she had fought for settling over her. Dimitri was defeated, his plans shattered. Emily knew the war was over. As the authorities took Dimitri into custody, Emily stood in the clearing, surrounded by her allies. The tension had broken, and for the first time in days, she allowed herself to breathe. The battle was over, but the scars would remain. Reynolds approached, offering a silent nod of respect. "You did it," he said simply. Emily glanced around at the forest that had been the backdrop to her fight. "We did it." She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There were still unanswered questions, unresolved emotions, but for now she could rest knowing that the past had finally been put to rest. Looking toward the horizon, Emily whispered, "It's over." And with that, she turned away, ready to face whatever the future held.